Hey everybody, welcome back to Discernment Now. This is Kevin Anthony. As you can see, my partner, Rich Van Every, is not here today, and it has been a while since we've done a video. So we've both been traveling. In fact, Rich is out on assignment right now, hopefully bringing us back some more juicy stuff when he gets back. But in the meantime, tons of stories have been popping that are really, really big. And so I wanted to jump on here and do a quick video to catch you up on some of the things that have happened since we have been traveling. So the first story is Tucker Carlson. By now, I'm sure you've heard that Tucker Carlson, Fox News's most popular and highest rated personality, has been fired from Fox. Now, you know on this show that we don't cover news stories just because they're in the news. We cover news stories because we want to cover topics that make you think. Things where maybe what you're being told isn't exactly what is going on. And so there were a couple of things about the Tucker thing that I wanted to cover in this episode. The first one is not too long after Tucker was let go, these tapes started surfacing. When they're off air, the tape is still rolling, the mics are still on, and they're still recording stuff. It's just kind of backstage stuff that happens. But there seems to have been a campaign to try to smear Tucker's reputation, because right away, all of these tapes started coming out with him joking around and doing things, and they were attempting to paint Tucker in a bad light. The funny thing is, though, is if you really paid attention to the videos, they actually made Tucker look better, like a real person with a sense of humor and a genuine guy who's pretty similar off air as he is on air. So they apparently had the opposite effect that they were trying to have. But you always have to ask yourself this question: why? So a lot of people are saying, well, Fox News must be leaking these things. And when you really look at it, what does Fox News have to gain by leaking these things? It's not really helping them look any better. So then the question is, who is leaking them? We don't really know who's leaking them. And again, why? Why are they trying so hard to make Tucker Carlson look bad? Well, we may have an answer to that now, because just recently, James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, if you're familiar with the Project Veritas scandal that happened where the board basically staged a coup in order to get him out, right after he published a bunch of stories blowing the whistle on Pfizer. Interesting. Keep that in mind, that James O'Keefe got ousted from his own organization that he created right after he attempted to take on Big Pharma. Well, James O'Keefe is back. He's got a new group called OMG, the OKeefe Media Group. And he has hidden camera footage from a Fox insider, a producer at Fox, who basically says that Tucker was let go for two reasons. Number one reason is because his coverage of things like COVID was costing Fox News a lot of money in Big Pharma advertising dollars. Oh, there's that Big Pharma thing again. And then the second reason was apparently that if you're familiar with the Fox News Dominion voting systems lawsuit, this insider alleges that one of the conditions in that lawsuit was that Tucker had to be fired. So notice that there are two main things here that are apparently behind Tucker being fired. He took on Big Pharma, and he took on the problems with our voting system. Two topics you absolutely can't go anywhere near, or you end up getting fired. So, the reason why we're talking about Tucker Carlson on this show is because you really have to stop and think about the implications of that. Think about the implications of whether or not Tucker was fired because of Big Pharma pressure or because of pressure from Dominion. So right away, when you see things like that happening, you have to say to yourself, there must be some truth. There must be some merit to what he's saying if these people are so worried and so threatened that they have to have him fired. So definitely there's more to that story. I'm sure it will keep developing over time. But as always, do not take anything the media tells you at face value, because they're pretty much always lying to you. All right, second story. Oh, speak about the media lying to us. Apparently, a couple weeks ago, while I was traveling, some new emails have surfaced in the Jeffrey Epstein story. Uh-oh, what do they say now? Well, apparently these emails talk about meetings that Epstein had or was going to have with some very, very influential people. And basically what's going on here is the emails indicate that what was happening is that Jeffrey Epstein was meeting with very influential people and blackmailing them. Oh my God, this is crazy. Where have we heard this before? We have been talking about the fact that Jeffrey Epstein worked for intelligence agencies and was running a giant honeypot blackmail operation for years now. For years. And what were we called? Conspiracy theorists. Oh, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. Jeffrey Epstein was just a rich financier who happens to know a lot of people. Of course, nobody can tell you where he made his money. They say, oh yeah, he made it in finance. Okay, how in finance? With what? Nobody's ever answered that question, because he didn't actually make it in finance. So here we are again, years later, and we have more evidence to prove what we've been saying all along is in fact the actual truth. So remember how many times the media denied this? Over and over and over again. Ask yourself this question: why have we still not seen the Epstein plane flight logs? That's interesting. Or the little black book with the client list in it. How come we haven't seen that? Yeah, we know why. Because he was indeed running a honeypot blackmail operation. That's what he was doing. So now we have more evidence that definitely points in that direction. So again, don't trust the media. Pretty much everything they tell you is a lie. And of course, that leads us up to our next story, which are more Hunter Biden emails. So apparently some more emails have surfaced that show very directly that Hunter Biden was arranging meetings with his business associates with Joe Biden himself. So, many times Joe Biden has said, I didn't know anything about my son's business dealings. I never met with anybody. What he was doing was his own thing. And now we have these emails here showing that Hunter Biden was literally saying, okay, I'm going to set up a meeting with Joe and blah, 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 right? So again, the media has been lying to you about that over and over and over again. So what else has the media been lying to you about? Oh, that takes us on to the very next story, which is the Cleveland Clinic. This is an interesting one. This has to do with COVID and vaccines, another subject you are not allowed to touch at all. But according to Dr. Charles Hoff, the Cleveland Clinic followed 51,000 people for 3 months to see who was getting COVID. The people that had the bivalent booster, the one that's supposed to keep you the safest, they were getting COVID more than anyone else, he noted. There was an absolute, direct, linear correlation that the more shots you got, the more likely you would get COVID. That is a direct quote from Dr. Charles Hoff. He analyzed the data that came from the Cleveland Clinic. There are some videos out there of him doing that. You can actually see the charts and graphs for yourself. Some of those charts also showed that the more shots you had, the more likely you were to end up in the ICU. So remember when they said they are safe and they're effective, and Joe Biden got in front of the entire world and said, if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. Well, it turns out that was a big fat lie also, and now we have data to prove that. Trust nothing these people tell you. Nothing. And that leads me to the last story that I wanted to cover in this episode. And I know I'm going through them kind of fast, but I just wanted to get something out there to catch you up on some of the big stories that are going around out there. The Durham report was recently released. What is the Durham report? Well, there's a special prosecutor, John Durham, who was investigating the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. And I'm going to use the word hoax. He was set up as a special prosecutor to investigate what happened in that case. It has taken years. I think it's been about 4-ish years or so. He's been investigating this. People on the Trump side or the conservative side have been anxiously awaiting this report because they felt that this was going to be a bombshell and lots of people were going to get arrested, and it was finally going to bring justice to the situation. People on the left kept saying, oh, it's a nothing burger. He's not going to find anything. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. Why are we even bothering with this? Okay, well, the report finally came out. What does the report say? Well, the media is saying the report didn't say anything, that it was a total nothing burger. However, those who've really read the report and looked into it have found some really pretty shocking things in the report. So what did it say? Well, the report clearly states that they had no evidence to start the investigation and then never found any evidence after that. So generally, if you want to open up a giant investigation, especially an investigation on, say, somebody like, the President of the United States, you would have to have some evidence, some reason to potentially start an investigation. Well, according to this report, they never had any evidence whatsoever. Furthermore, it also indicated that all of the key players knew there was no evidence. So apparently, everybody knew that this was a strategy by the Clinton campaign to distract from the Clinton email scandal and also to take down Trump, the number one opponent in the election. And everybody seemed to know this. Everybody knew that there was nothing to this case, and yet they all pushed it over and over and over again. And what did the media do? Oh, the media, they just parroted the same thing that the government officials said over and over and over. And now here we are, years later, the Durham report comes out and says all of this was nonsense. There was never any evidence whatsoever, and it was all made up. And it even indicates that this was known to be a strategy of the Clinton campaign. I mean, this really is huge. This is a bombshell. It is sad that nothing's going to happen from it, and a lot of people are upset with John Durham for not doing anything. But the reality is it's the DOJ that has to press charges, and we know they're so corrupt they're not going to do anything about it. But at least we have now real evidence that the entire thing was basically a witch hunt. We always knew that. Again, we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's not because we want to go out there and defend Trump. We're just looking at the actual evidence. And as the evidence emerged over time, as we found out about the falsified FISA warrants, as we found out that they lied to the FISA court, they withheld evidence, they used intelligence agencies to set up members of the Trump administration. When you hear things like that, they have to set off red flags. And that's part of the discernment part of this, is we have been hearing small details like that all along, that they used intelligence operatives to set up meetings with people inside the Trump campaign, that sources that the government claimed were Russian operatives were actually working for the U.S. government as paid informants. And you hear little things like that all along the way, and they should set off some red flags. You should go, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. How, if that's true, then what the government's telling us can't possibly be true, right? So here we go. Now we have a report that actually proves all of this. The report also shows that there was major corruption within the FBI. as if we needed another report to show that, but it does indeed clearly show that as well. So this is another case of, when these stories break, you really have to use your discernment. You have to pay attention to those little details and figure out how they fit in. I would also suggest that the second a story hits, you immediately assume that you're being lied to, unless you have some proof that it is true. Because that's the common theme of every single one of these stories is all of these things happened in the past. Quote unquote conspiracy theorists told you what they thought was likely going on here based on the evidence at hand. They were then called conspiracy theorists and told that they were crazy and not to listen to them. And then over time, everything they said turned out to be true. So that's the common theme with all these stories. I think these things are pretty big. They are bombshells. Do I think anything's going to happen to the players involved in the Trump-Russia hoax? Nope. Do I think anything's going to happen to Big Pharma over the vaccine? Nope. Do I think anything's going to happen to Hunter Biden or Joe Biden? Nope. Yeah, pretty much nothing's going to happen to any of the people involved in any of these stories because we have a completely and totally corrupt system. However, it is still important that we, the people, understand what's happening so that we do not get fooled by their lies. All right, that's all I wanted to cover in this episode, and hopefully for the next one, my co-host will be back here in the studio with me. Until then, keep your eyes wide open and be discerning of anything and everything that you hear in the media.